Hi, welcome back. We're going to pick right up where we left off last week. As you saw at the end of the show last week, I just finished putting in that third tree. Now we're going to jump over here and get the trees in on that side. We're going to go back to the flat medium brush. Remember to get it wet, then towel dry it off. And again, we're going to stick with the same colors we did there. We had a little bit of white, but primarily much more blue and green. And probably even leaning towards the blue a little bit. And you want to, again, get your brush to that chiseled edge that we spoke about last week, and we'll go right up to the canvas and start dropping these in. We'll put one right about there. Again, if you recall how we did this, we just kind of get it started. You kind of go back with some little sweepy strokes. Not sleepy strokes, but sweepy strokes. And again, you can make these to be as large or as wide as you want to. It's always kind of good if you can get it to cross over in front of another tree that you have. It kind of helps give that impression that it's further back because it pushes it back. Plus it's darker and it's larger, so always take advantage of those situations when you can. And we'll put another one over there. I'm just going to reload the brush and be right back up. Sticking with the same color. Put one maybe a little bit taller, just to change up a bit. Again, just kind of going through and just sweeping your strokes back and forth. Again, if you want to, like I mentioned last week, if you just want to do one side at a time, if that's easier, go right ahead and do that. Whatever works best for you. Then bring this down. We're going to separate this out with highlights, so don't worry about it running into the other tree. And I guess we'll put one more in there. I'm just going to reload again. I'll be right back up. And we'll put that one right about here, maybe. I like to do trees this way, especially larger ones, because it's really difficult to make them look the same. So you don't get that same look. I know that some people like to do pine trees with like a fan brush. The reason I don't do it with a fan brush is because it gives you the exact same shape over and over and over, so all your trees look exactly the same. And in nature, that's really not how those work that well. Let's go ahead and clean out our brush. Now we're going to block in our bridge. We need that to be a dark color. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to purposely leave this part of the bridge, which is underneath, excuse me, I'm going to leave that white for now. Then after we start putting the rocks on, it kind of helps you to understand where we are here. After we get that in, then I'll go in and put that dark shadow underneath part of the bridge in. So right now we're just going to stick with the same brush, and we're going to go to the blue and the brown. You can use burnt sienna, or if you want to put a little bit of burnt umber in there, if you have that, that's perfectly fine. Just kind of get a dark color. And we're just going to go in and just kind of block this in. And this is just, again, going to be the underpainting for the bridge. And it's got a little bit of an art to the shape. Good, kind of juicy paint there. And just bring that right on down. I'm going to get some of this. I think there's a little bit of moisture in this. I'm going to get this out, get a little bit more paint here. That's better. Again, I'm going to work around where that under the bridge part is going to be. And again, with this, don't worry about your brush strokes. There. There. All right, let's go ahead and clean that brush out. I think right now we're going to work a little bit into the water while we're letting the bridge dry, because I kind of want to get to that bridge during this episode and start putting the rocks in. So for the water, we're going to, again, grab a little bit of white and a little bit of blue. And then I'm going to go up, and again, we've talked about this in the past. Whenever you want to paint anything that lies flat, like a stream, a pathway, sidewalk, whatever like that, to make it appear to be flat, you need to use horizontal strokes. If your strokes go on an angle, remember I spoke about last week, is when you're doing highlights, it will always indicate the size, the shape, the angle, or the movement of the object. So you want these to be horizontal so it appears to lie flat. So you just kind of get back here and get started. And this just needs to be a little bit brighter than what you've got currently as an underpainting. And so I'm going to bring it up to about here. It's going to be a little bit darker underneath the bridge because it's going to be in shadow. So I'll put that in a little bit later. So you just want to work this out. I'm going to get a little bit more paint on my brush. Again, you want to maintain some horizontal strokes. One of the things I always tell my students when we get to a part like this, when you're doing water maybe, is to double check yourself, is that after you've gotten a few strokes going, if you turn your brush like this so the handle of the brush is up against your canvas, if you hold that against your stroke, you can tell if you're horizontal or not. If your strokes are like this, you can clearly see that, oops, it's got to come up this way. Instead of doing the entire area, then discovering that you did it with a tilt to it, just do a few strokes at first, hold it up against her, and it's a really good measuring stick to see if you're staying horizontal or not. I'm going to go back and reload, grab some white, a little bit of blue again, and we'll go back up to the river, or the little stream, I guess. Again, you just want to make sure you stay with nice horizontal strokes. Just enough to kind of give an indication that there's maybe a little bit of movement in the water. And we'll just kind of keep working our way down. Remember to double check yourself for horizontal strokes. Okay, then we're going to go back. I think that's enough for outside of the shadow area. Now we're going to go back and do some of the shadow parts. So we're going to add a lot more blue to this using the same brush. Again, that chiseled edge. Now we're going to go up to the canvas and we're going to incorporate this some in here. In fact, I'm going to get a little bit more blue. That can be a little bit darker. I'll be right back up. That's better. And just incorporate this where you would believe this to be underneath that bridge area. Now what I'm going to do is add just a little bit of white to it, just to lighten it up a little bit, and I'm just going to skim over the top of that just to indicate a little bit of movement, but not very much. There, just like that. Then we're going to go down and clean out that brush. Always remember to, after you've cleaned your brush out, when you go to dry it off, kind of reshape your brush a little bit, kind of get it back to its original shape, and then lie it down flat. And then that way it kind of helps it go back to its original shape. Flat bristle brushes have a memory to them, and they're manufactured and designed that they want to go back to their original shape. But as brushes start to get a little bit older, they tend to relax a little bit more, kind of like us. And so sometimes you just need to reshape them once in a while, kind of keep your brush, you maintain the life of the brush a little bit better. I think what we're going to do next is we'll start putting some highlights in our snow on the bank, and that'll allow that to dry a little bit longer. We're getting pretty close to that being dry. So after we work a little bit here, we'll be able to put some of the rocks that are in there. So again, we're going to start out with some white. We could probably add some of this blue to it that we have right here. And also we're going to incorporate a little bit of red to kind of capture some of that color that's in the sky. Now the secret here, just like with everything you highlight, is that you don't want to cover up all of your underpainting. You just want to give some indications. So you just kind of go through like this. And this is where too you want to kind of pay attention to the angle of the slope of the hill that's here. Now if you wanted this to appear to be somewhat flat, your strokes are going to be going basically horizontal. If you want it to appear to be a hill, you need to form your stroke to follow the angle that you want. Remember, it goes right back to what I spoke about earlier, is about highlighting. It always indicates the size, the shape, the angle, or the movement of the object. So you want to make sure that you're going in the direction that you kind of interpreted your hill to be at, if it's a hill. Again, you just want to come through and not cover up all of that dark. That's got to show through there. Again, it kind of helps that sense that there's maybe some low areas, and you'll get a little bit of a sense of some distance in there. I know this kind of goes against maybe what you thought, where you just kind of blanket the whole thing in white. But really, if you really go out and start studying snow, and maybe by the time that this airs, we may have some snow by then, I'm not sure. But really kind of look at it and you'll see that it's really not as thick as what you may see. Also, you'll notice that it does pick up some colors from, certainly the sky. So if you have some red that's in the sky, that oftentimes is reflected into the snow also. So even though we always think of snow being pure white, it truly is not very often. And you can hear me kind of scrubbing this in. So I'm allowing myself to have some thicker areas, but I'm also allowing some of the underpainting to show in, again, to get some movement. Now you can always go back, which we probably will do, and we'll highlight some of these to kind of bring out maybe a little bit of a hill or a drift or something that's within the snow. I'm just making another batch of this, some white, blue, and some red. And I covered up all my white. There we go. And we'll just come through. Again, start to re-highlight. And really work this in. Just bring that right on down to the bank of the river. And again, like I said, after we get this part done, we'll come back to this later, and we'll kind of pick out some key areas where you want to maybe bring out some little hills, or maybe there's some low areas. You really want to work this down. I'm going to have to reload the brush and I'll be right back. We'll just kind of start to finish this part up over here. There. Now we're going to do the exact same thing on the left-hand side. So we're going to use the same color combinations, some white, some blue, and maybe a little bit of red in it, just to kind of give a little tint. But again, you want to skip around and allow some of that blue to show through. And I'm going to have to reload. In fact, I probably should make up another little batch of this. A little bit more red. Then we'll go right back up. I want to get a little bit stronger against the bridge there. So we have a really nice contrast. I got a little wild hair there. Go back to the scrubbing motions. Again, making sure you don't cover up all of your dark. And I'm going to reload. And we're going to go right back up. And just kind of spread this around a bit. You'll see when we go to highlight this how much the highlights will just jump up off of this. I think maybe over here you can see it a little bit. You got some little bit brighter areas in here. They kind of start to stand out. We'll even brighten that up maybe a little bit more. Better get that edge right there. I'll be right back. Just kind of notice that it's not settled down very well. There we go. Let's go ahead and clean that brush out. Now I think it's time to start rocking. Now, you can have a couple options when it comes to rocks. If you want to make your bridge with rocks that are all the same color, certainly those are out there and you can do that. I kind of like to do it where there's a variety of some different colors. I mean, obviously you're going to do some different shapes, but different colors, you know, it kind of helps bring a little bit of color, some earth tones into a painting that's just basically got some blues, some whites, and a little bit of red to it. So you want to use your small flat bristle brush. And how I do this to ensure that I kind of am making some different colors of rocks is I start out with what I call a base color. And that's some white and some blue and some brown. Now that will give you a grayish color. Now it could be grayish, a brownish gray, it could be a bluish gray. It really depends on how much of colors that you put in there. But what I tend to do is I get it to a color that I want to start with. So this is going to be like a bluish gray color. I guess it's got a little brown peeking through. And so I go with this. Now what I do is, so I don't end up with a whole bunch of these in the same area, is that I just kind of block this in, but I move these around to different areas. And just kind of change the shape a little bit once in a while. I kind of spread these out a little bit. Hopefully you can see those all right. I'm going to add a little bit of brown to that. And be right back. Yeah, I like that color better. I'm just going to go back over what I've already done. And just kind of spread these out a bit. Again, kind of change the shapes up. And then what I do is I go now into that same pile, and maybe I'll change this up and add some blue to it. So this obviously is going to get to a bluish gray color. And I'll go back up and incorporate that in. I'm going to add a little bit of white so that shows up a little bit better so you can see it. There we go. And again, I'm just kind of spreading these around, changing the shapes, changing some locations. Now maybe I'm going to add a little bit more blue to it. And we'll get a really bluish gray color. There we go. Then after you get going here, then you're going to start fitting some in. And that's really where you kind of get creative with some different shapes and things, because you're kind of left with little voids. And you can change the shapes up. I mean, you can have some small ones, some larger ones. Make sure you get some up near the top. I'm going to add a little bit of white to that. Lighten that up. And that comes up with a different color rock. Just remember to spread these around so you get a nice combination and a good flow of different colors. Then as you get near the end, then you're just kind of hunting and pecking where you think a rock should fit in. Now what I'll do is I'll go back and grab a little bit of brown just to change that up again. And I'll go right back up. And just remember to change some shapes up here and there. Make sure you bring some right on down to the edge. And again, like I said when we first started, if you really feel you just want to go with one color, that's perfectly fine. I'm going to grab a little bit more blue. Maybe get or brown, I'm sorry. Maybe get it a little stronger here. There we go. Again, just kind of look for little pockets where you have a lot of dark showing, and that's where you're going to start throwing these in. I'm sorry I'm bouncing around a bit. I think I'm going to get it a little bit darker blue. Again, I'm just kind of adding just color to the same pile I've been working out of. Then we'll go up and we'll see how this works. That's a little bit darker. Again, you're just looking for little gaps and maybe just a little bit too large. Now, it's okay to have some black or some of that dark color showing through, obviously. You don't have to go nuts with putting 7,000 rocks in here unless that's what you'd like to do. It's totally up to you. Just where you kind of feel you've got a really good combination and it kind of looks like it's pretty full. And then what we'll do too is after this kind of sets up and dries, is that we'll go through and we'll put some snow on these. So it kind of gives you that sense that they're three-dimensional and they're kind of sticking out for maybe the mortar or whatever's holding these in. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good combination. I don't see a lot of big gaps. Let's go ahead and clean out our brush. I think we're going to stay with that same brush, and we'll start highlighting. We're not going to highlight the trees that are all the way back here because they're too far away. If you put some highlights on those, it tends to bring them forward, and you really don't want to do that. But the trees in the middle ground, you can certainly put a little bit of highlight on those. So that's going to be some white and some blue. And again, I got way too much blue. And how you want to do this is that you just kind of come in and just lightly pounce on some of the tops of the branches. And just kind of bouncing around. You don't want to make strokes because lines don't look that good for highlights, especially on trees. So I'm just kind of bouncing this to kind of give a little bit of depth for the snow. And by just going in and tapping, you kind of get that sense of some buildup of snow that's on top of the branches. And over here you can bring this in front of that other tree, which makes that come right out in front. And we'll put a little bit on this one over here. Again, just kind of lightly tapping. Give the indication of some snow that's on those trees. Now, because those are close enough that we can see them, we need to put some shadow snow on it. So this is going to be the same color with a little bit more blue in it. Because remember, blue is always a shadow color. And we'll go up and we'll put that same technique. We'll put some of that on the opposite side. Again, just give that indication. And jump over here and get this one. You don't need a whole lot of this. But you can't have snow on just half of a tree though. There. Now while you have that color, you should probably put a little indication of some shadows in the snow. And I'm just lightly scrubbing this and bring that right up against the base and just bring it out a little bit. We'll kind of brighten up maybe a little bit in front of those. This of course wouldn't have shadows because the shadows would be on the right hand side and they're behind those trees, so you don't have to mess with that at all. And you want your shadow, keep your shadow, especially for pine trees, you want to keep them a little bit wider at the base, and then you want to narrow it down at tip, just like the shape of a tree would be. Kind of like a little triangle thing. So you want to almost do that same kind of a thing where it comes up to a point. Again, that helps give you that impression that it's a shadow of that tree. I think while we have this small brush out, I'm going to go back to that dark color, and we'll put in that dark underside of that bridge. Again, we're going to use some blue. It's about 3 parts blue, 1 part brown. And again, if you want to use burnt umber with this, you're perfectly fine to do that. And we'll go right up to here, and you want to just put that nice dark color right underneath that. Now at the top, it kind of tapers up to a point, but then down here, you have to. This is what indicates the width of the entire bridge. So the part down here needs to be a little bit wider, and then because of the angle, then it tapers up into almost nothing. Yeah, you can go ahead and clean out your brush. We have just a few minutes left in this episode. I think I want to put a smaller pine tree right in here. So I think we got time we can block that on. This is going to be with some blue and some green. And this should be kind of dark, just like what those are, because they're so much closer. And this one we'll put right about in here. This is just going to be a little guy. And again, just kind of do the little swoopy strokes. And we'll just kind of have him just right in this area right here. I'm going to add a little bit of blue to that. There's quite a bit of green there, so I'm going to add a little bit of blue to that. Just to kind of winterize it. Then I'm going to clean out the brush real quick, and then I'm going to put a little bit of a shadow behind there. This again needs to be, because you're shadowing the snow, this needs to be white and some blue. And don't be afraid to get darker with the blue. This is actually got to be darker than your underpainting that you currently have. And also you got to make sure that you follow the contour of the hill. Because if you did that shadow like that, then again it makes the land look just like that way. But since we've already kind of indicated a direction, and again you want to taper that out so it kind of goes to a little bit of a point. Just kind of soften the edges up a bit. That's all you have to do. Let's go ahead and clean that out. Sometimes what you can do too is while that paint's wet, if you just want to soften it with your finger, it kind of gets rid of the hard edges. But it doesn't work real well once the paint's dry though, however. I think we could go through and start adding a little bit of brighter highlights back in the back. Although we're probably not going to have time to do it, but maybe we'll do that first thing next week. So get your painting caught up to this point, get your bridge done. Again, if you want different colors rocks, just keep working on the same pile. Adjust your colors as you go, or just keep them one color. It's totally up to you. Thank you so much for watching. We appreciate you watching. We're going to finish this one up next week. We'll get all the highlights in, finish with the highlights with the snow and everything. But grab some brushes and some paints. You really can do this. I promise you, you can. Visit my website. I can show you different ways to help you get started. We would love to help you. Anyone can paint. You can do that too. So we'll see you next week.